It's time for Travel Banter, your favorite chit-chat podcast with your hosts, Trevor Mountcastle and Tom Kim. So many aviation movies in this world, and I'm sure you've watched all of them, right? You know, it's Up in the Air, and The Terminal is got to be one of those, right?
So you've got The Terminal, you've got Airplane. Is it Airplane?
Oh, yes. Classic.
Up in the Air.
Yep.
What are some other good ones? I mean, Passenger 57 is not really that good.
I like Passenger 57.
It's an action, but it's not like, I mean, it's sort of like the Liam Neeson hijacked plane one.
Yeah, that's another one, nonstop, right? Like that's another aviation movie, right?
Well, and then Plane with Gerard Butler, but that's not really...
Yeah, I think it's funny that you bought that. I think you bought that because you realize you're never going to see it on the airline, right?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
When you told me you were watching that and you had bought it, I was like, of course he did. That makes total sense. Because you know what? I imagine that you are a consumer of movies on airplanes more than your average Joe.
Oh, absolutely.
I say that because I'm probably in that category too.
Oh, absolutely. In all fairness, we'll probably watch it again, but I'm not sure that it's an amazing movie. Like the next time we'll watch it is when you're in town.
Okay, I will watch it. But I mean, I think you've got a special affinity for Gerard Butler. I'm saying more than anybody I've ever met, I think.
Yes, but he doesn't have that many films that fall into the aviation geek realm, unfortunately.
I don't know that he has any films that fall into the aviation geek world.
The movie Plane?
Other
He's
than that
a pilot?
one. No, I'm thinking other than that one. I mean, you know, he's either like what, running away from like this or that or the other thing. Asteroids.
He got shot out of the sky in Marine One once.
Yeah, but that's Secret Service. It's not. He wasn't piloting the chopper.
I feel like they should do an Air Force One remake with him in it.
Oh,
I think that would be really
Air
good.
Force One reboot with Gerard Butler. We should be producers. We should be executive producers. I can see it now. This will be the elevator pitch. It's like, imagine Air Force One, only Gerard Butler.
You could get Stanley Tucci as one of the cabinet, one of the National Security Council.
Now you're an executive producer, you're a casting member, you're a casting producer. You are just multi-talented, my friend. Multi-talented. Multifaceted.
Ooh, I like that.
Another aviation movie that I've watched recently, believe it or not, is View from the Top. Have you ever watched this movie?
I've never even heard of it.
You've never heard of it? It's got like Gwyneth Paltrow in it. It's got like Mark Ruffalo.
It's like Marvel revisioned.
Christina Applegate. It's funny. It's one of these movies that was created before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And they had it in the can for like 2 years because they didn't want to release it. Number one, it wasn't that great a movie, but they probably wanted to release it quite a bit earlier, but it just happened to coincide with 9/11 when it was in, I guess, post-production. And the funny thing is I bought this audiobook from this comedian, and this audiobook is all about him retelling this obscure movie from like 2003 or something. I was like, and I bought this, Audible. I was going through Audible, because Amex got rid of it, right? So I was like, all these Amex credits, right? So I was just constantly buying audiobooks, and I just bought this one, and I was buying a bunch of aviation focused ones. And so I bought this one, and I didn't even know what it was about. And I started listening to it, and I realized he's recanting the View from the Top movie that I've watched back like 10 years ago or something. And I'm like, oh, I guess I got to buy that. And I ended up buying that on Amazon too, so I could rewatch it so that I could enjoy this audiobook that I bought.
I'm going to have to watch it now. I'm going to have to find time
I think you are going to have to. I'll have to give you my login for Amazon so you can watch it.
There we go.
We'll swap Amazon logins or something.
Sounds like a deal. And then, we can't forget the Idris Elba one.
Oh, that's right. Hijack, right?
Hijack.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
I thought it was actually very good. I thought it was very well done. Yes, I will just say I thought it was very well done. I mean, I'm not going to say it was out of this world. And there was definitely some things that were little suspect from, I'll say, the interior cabin. But I thought it was very well done for what it was. And that's on Apple TV, right?
Was that British Airways again? Was he in a British Airways cabin?
No, it was first class was British Airways. Oh, man, I'm trying to think. Business class was definitely not British Airways.
Oh, okay.
I think business class was like Swiss, or I can't remember if it was the staggered like Swiss does, or the staggered, like what? Because there's like the two different types of the staggered.
Right, the ones with the throne seats versus the ones that are like on Delta or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, because I think Delta doesn't do throne seats.
Yeah, Delta just does, it's binary. It's either you're on this side or you're on that side, because it's all pairs, right? And the throne seats are where you have like three, right? Where there's like, I'm sorry, or it's interleaving, right? It's like 2 1 2 1 2 1.
Yeah. Now I have to look at images.
Because you're gonna sweat those small details.
Oh my God, it's gonna bug me.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes to be in this league.
It truly is. Oh, and none of the good photos they have all the business class, or they have all first class, which is definitely the British Airways. It actually looks like it's the old British Airways.
Yeah.
Like with the kind of khaki-ish.
Did you watch all of the Flight Attendant on HBO or whatever it was?
Yeah. How many seasons do they have now?
I don't know. There might have been 2 or something. I think I watched like the first 2 episodes and then I got tired of it. I don't think I didn't ever finish it.
I watched all the first season.
Okay.
I don't know if I got through all the second season. So the problem is like it gets pegged as like a aviation movie, but it's really just a drama that just happens to be centered around a flight attendant. Like there's not a lot of plane time, period. I mean, there's some travel, which is fun, but like season 2 is even less travel. It's like really, really bad. I thought. I don't even think I got through it. So I shouldn't say it's really bad, but it's just.
Yeah, I might take my time on that one. Maybe when I really have nothing else to watch. I have another movie that I purchased. It's some obscure French movie with Jean Reno, and I forget who the lady is. She's also relatively famous. It's called like Jet Lag. It's just fun to see the B-roll because all this like these airplanes taking off and landing at Charles de Gaulle. And you see all these liveries from like the early 2000s. Like you say, oh, I haven't seen that JAL livery in ages. I haven't seen that Air France livery in a long time or whatever it is.
That sounds kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. You might have to check that out too.
And it's called Jet Lag. I should watch it when I'm up at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it might put you to sleep. But it's funny. It's a French movie, but it's only dubbed. For some reason, you can't watch it. And I would much rather watch it in French with English subtitles than kind of here. But the funny thing is Juliette Binoche and Jean Reno, who are both well known for speaking English, being French people in English movies. So they actually did their own dubbing, which is probably why it's acceptable. But I think I'd rather hear them speak French and read English than, even though these are well-known French actors that happen to, act pretty frequently in English productions.
Interesting. Yeah, I cannot find a photo of what the business class seat is of Hijack. I'm going to literally have to watch an episode again. It's going to bug me.
I need to watch that one. Is Idris Elba in another? He's not in another plane aviation movie. Wait, who's in Plane? Is it Gerard Butler and who's the other protagonist in Plane? Because it's another African American person, isn't it?
It's not Idris Elba. I don't believe so.
It's not Idris Elba. Okay.
Let me see. Because he's a little familiar, but like he's not the.
Okay, I couldn't remember because it'd been a while since I watched that trailer, and literally I was thinking, oh, this is not going to be on an airplane, will it?
Mike Coulter. Does that sound familiar?
Mike Coulter.
He plays Gaspar.
Is he like the criminal or something?
Yeah, I think he's the guy that's
on the plane, and now he has to defend the plane with Gerard Butler.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but
well, I mean, yes. It's in the trailer. Okay, I've only watched the trailer.
He's a criminal, and he ends up helping,
which is actually pretty tropey. Like it's not like if somebody were to explain to me this movie and give me the premise, I probably could have guessed that plot point.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. That's totally a fair point. I don't know. I thought it was good. Like not good. Like watch it 10 times. And really, Gerard Butler's like the only notable name. A lot of the movies have like somebody you recognize. I mean, maybe Mike Coulter is sort of.
That name sounds somewhat familiar. Like I'm sure he's in a bunch of movies, and you probably watched one of them, and you just don't know his name by heart.
Yeah, like he's got the familiar face.
Yeah,
exactly.
Did you watch any of the like really old like Airport 77 and Airport 79 and? Have you watched any of those old ones?
I have not.
The ones that kind of inspired Airplane, because there were all these like kind of disaster airport movies in like the 70s, right? And then, you had Airplane coming out in the 80s, and they were kind of lampooning some of that along with other stuff.
Yeah, I have not. I don't know. There's a lot of content, but there's also no content. And when there's no content, I just have to remind myself that there are these good classics out there.
I don't know if it's a great movie. It probably isn't, but I get a dig out of watching these kind of time capsules of aviation.
They are interesting.
Because you basically, the movie starts out with Charlton Heston on a Dulles Airport mobile lounge, basically coming off the mobile lounge and kissing this lady, this flight attendant. That's like the beginning of the movie. And you get to basically see like Dulles in the 70s, you know, doing the mobile lounges from like the main terminal.
And this is,
I think it's like Airport 70. It's like the middle one. It's like, and the funny part is they're on the red eye special, and the red eye special is leaving Dulles to go to LA in the evening. Any problems there?
oh, geez.
So the red eye is going westbound because that's how it works, right?
Totally. Well, I mean, in all fairness, you're going to be like completely red eye by the time you turn around and head to Europe, which is what a true red eye is.
I'm gonna spoil it, but basically they're on a jumbo jet and it like collides, and the pilots are blinded. So there's no pilot on this plane. That's what the setup is for the disaster.
Wow. Okay. Still worth watching.
And actually, there's a movie called Red Eye too. I think that's like a horror movie with Cillian Murphy, the guy from Oppenheimer. He's a baddie.
I just can't do horror movies. Like, even if they're aviation related, I just can't do horror movies.
I guess it's more of a thriller, but you know, he's like a psychopath. And Rachel McAdams is the woman that has to survive.
Okay. Rachel could get folks. I mean, she's actually a pretty decent actress.
I like most of the Rachel McAdams stuff that I've watched. She's good in a lot of stuff.
She is.
So I think we've pretty much killed aviation movies, which is, I know that's probably more interesting to me, but we probably talked it to death.
I think I have some homework.
Oh, good.
But to tell you the crazy, so this is
the definition of complex itinerary, right? Is that what this was?
This is not just a definition of complex. This is
okay. This is next level complex.
No. I will say this is unconventional complex.
Oh, unconventional complex. Okay.
I mean, maybe not even as complex, just
You're
unconventional.
Really talking this up. Like, am I going to listen to this and I'm going to be like,
so? Oh God, oh no! Now I'm nervous. Oh, such high expectations. I did it to myself.
Anxiety.
Okay, so here we go. We've got our Etihad first class to Abu Dhabi. Then we've got business class to KL, Kuala Lumpur.
On Etihad?
On Etihad, yeah. Only a 3-4 hour layover. Then we have 2 nights in Kuala Lumpur. And this is one of those things where, like, if we were to release this, we'd probably release this privately on the Milenomics Slack feed, because I don't want to put my Hyatt concierge. Actually, I'm not even going to say that because I don't want to.
You don't have to give her name, you know. You just say her name.
Yeah, I don't want to set an expectation for people that the concierges will do this sort of thing. Needless to say, we're staying at the Grand Hyatt. We were able to apply an instrument to be able to be in a suite. I'll say it that way. So we've got 2 nights at the Grand Hyatt KL. Then we fly on, I actually have to check. It's either MH or AirAsia or something. I can't even remember what airline. It's like not a standard airline that we're flying down to Singapore. Give me like 30 seconds because I need to figure out what that. It's Malaysia Air. Okay, so it's Malaysia Air booked with Capital One.
Okay. So essentially revenue ticket.
It is a revenue ticket, yes, yeah. So we've got that, and then used American Express Platinum Hotel credit for the, I think it's the Mandarin Oriental or Shangri-La.
Oh, well, they probably have one of each of those in Singapore. I've stayed at the Mandarin Oriental.
No. Mandarin Oriental was too expensive, so we went with Shangri-La Singapore, which is, I think, off of Scott's Road. It's like in that area near the Grand Hyatt, or where the now closed renovating Grand Hyatt is.
Okay.
It's a few blocks from the St. Regis.
Orchard Road, or is it near Orchard Road?
Yeah, I think it's a few blocks away from Orchard Road, but I think it's up by Scott's over by the Newton Hawker Market. You know how, like, you walk up a few blocks from the Grand Hyatt and you've got that Newton Hawker Market?
Yeah, Newton one's not, yep.
Yeah, so we're there, and then we fly Scoot.
Oh, interesting.
Never flown Scoot before. Hey,
where was all this talk? You know, when we're talking Mr. Premium over here, and he's flying MH and wait, are you flying MH business to Singapore?
It's an hour and 10 flight. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's economy.
See, like even you
I told you it was non-conventional or unconventional.
But I mean, I think even you have the understanding that a 1 hour flight does not need to be in a premium class because it's so damn short.
I agree 100%. Actually, I need to look to see. I paid for my daughter to have her own seat on the 1 hour and 10 flight. I don't know why, actually, in hindsight, because it's only an hour and 10 minutes. But I mean, it was just so cheap. And the other thing was, I think I had a lot of the rewards left from
Capital One?
Capital One. Like, you know how like they give you the freebies?
Oh, the one you have to use the portal to book.
Yeah. So I booked it through the portal. And then, let's see. I booked Scoot. That's an hour and a half flight.
To go to where? Like Langkawi?
To go to Langkawi. Yeah. Okay. Singapore to Langkawi. I think I'm on the same one as Jeff and his family. And that was only SGD 241.
Okay.
I think that was everybody.
So you're basically flying through Singapore to get to Malaysia from Malaysia.
But we're doing a night in Singapore to catch up with friends.
Okay, yeah.
And then we've got on points, or no, it was a free night, free Marriott night, plus points at the St. Regis in Langkawi. And then we have a night that we booked with another American Express Platinum hotel credit because I just haven't used them, right? Like, yeah. We're getting to the end of the year and I've still got 2 more I got to use.
I booked a Shangri-La in Sydney on my FHR. So believe me, I'm doing the same thing. And then I have another FHR at the Intercontinental in Sydney.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. So after the FHR at the Four Seasons, then we have 3 nights that we booked with Michael Traeger and TravelStories. And those guys are great. I mean, Michael and his team got us a great rate at the time. I think closer in, the rate went down, but he pretty much said, look, you can do refundable or non-refundable. You can pay $100 or $200 more per night to have refundable, and it may or may not work out. And I said, you know what, let me take the, bird in the hand. And so I did that, and they did a lot of pre-coordination. They even ensured that the hotel was linking our FHR resort or FHR one night with the rest. And so they really did a great job for us. Then we fly Air Asia from Langkawi via, I have to check whether it's KLIA, whether it's Kuala Lumpur Terminal 2, and then we fly from Kuala Lumpur into, get this, and I'm not even going to say it right, Dan Mang?
Oh, yeah, you're going to Bangkok.
Yeah, Bangkok. Is it Dan Mang?
I may have actually flown that flight, believe it or not, on Air Asia.
So we've got that, again, Air Asia, different experience for us. And then we have a night in Bangkok.
Is there a city in Southeast Asia you're not going to? Maybe that'd be easier.
I mean, we're not getting into any Vietnam. We're not getting into any Indonesia.
Yeah, apparently Vietnam is saying, "Where's my Trevor?" I mean, Vietnam is like, Trevor keeps threatening to come to us. He like flies around us. He flies through us, but he never ends up landing. His feet never touch the ground.
And I want to get there so badly. Vietnam, you're on my list.
I think the Vietnam's like, what do we do? Like, we're insulted. Like, what does Trevor have against the Vietnamese? I don't get it.
I think it's the visa. I think it's the visa. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are other countries with visas. I
mean, the Australia visa is probably just about as much trouble as the Vietnam visa at this point.
Yeah, but I went through the trouble of getting, sending our passports in to the Vietnam embassy like 10 or 15 years ago.
They don't do it that way anymore.
I didn't get to use the passport or the visa, and I don't know. I know they don't do it anymore like that, but it makes me sad. But we're going to get to Da Nang. I mean, we almost have to with that airport code.
But I stray, this was a little bit of a tangent, back to Don Muang and Bangkok. What are you doing after that?
Yes, so we're using another FHR Amex Plat $200 credit to stay at the Waldorf Astoria. So now we're staying at...
Oh, interesting. At the Waldorf Astoria. Like, that's the one you picked, huh? Of all the options in Bangkok.
Well, I think that's in the similar area to where like the Grand Hyatt is. Like, I think it's relatively close to that.
It's like near Erawan or whatever?
Yeah, near Erawan. And I like that area. Remember, we stayed at Sukhumvit Marriott.
That was actually the first time I stayed in Sukhumvit, and I'm not that big a fan, to be completely honest.
Nor was I. And so I went to what I know, but I wanted to stay at a new hotel. And I hate to say it, the price was right for the Waldorf Astoria. I think the Park Hyatt was a little bit more. And I just wanted to try something new. We've never stayed at a Waldorf Astoria. A lot of people talk highly about it.
Hold. News breaking. You've never stayed at a Waldorf Astoria?
No.
That's like me, you saying you've never stayed at St. Regis, because I was also blown away by a couple years ago that you'd never stayed at one of those either.
And the first Conrad I've ever stayed at, actually the only Conrad I've ever stayed at, was when we traveled to Vegas to stay at the Resorts World.
Wow.
I have not stayed at a ton of premium hotels outside of my kind of core loyalty, but the Hilton Aspire opens up Hilton, and so I'm trying these new hotels. I mean, to be honest with you, the St. Regis, I equated the St. Regis very similar, and probably wrongly so, or maybe not, to the Ritz, and I had such a bad experience with Ritz.
Ritz just does not make sense to me in 2023. Like, who is the Ritz client? Like, who are these people who like Ritz-Carlton? Because there just must be so many old snooty people in the world that are just used to what they're used to.
That don't want elite recognition. They don't want all the benefits that you get with a St. Regis or a JW Marriott. Like, I just don't understand the Ritz brand.
I don't get it at all. I don't know if it's name recognition, like people know that a Ritz-Carlton's supposed to be good, so they can kind of just sit on their laurels, kind of, so to speak. But yeah, it's funny how St. Regis is pretty much an equivalent brand in many ways in the same company, and yet is so much better from just all aspects than Ritz-Carlton, at least of the ones I've stayed. It's not like I've never been to Ritz-Carlton either. I've stayed at some. I mean, I haven't stayed one in a couple of years probably, but I'm not really itching to do it because I just don't see what the value proposition is.
And I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So unconventional, right? And then we fly back to Abu Dhabi and we've got just a random overnight. I'm actually tempted to use an FHR there too, even though I'll get no value out of it. It's like, do I spend 3 or 12 or 15,000 points?
I was looking at my old photos, and my first time to Abu Dhabi, probably 2013, 14, something like that. And we stayed at the Fairmont, and that was actually an amazing stay. And it was so cheap. It was so inexpensive. It was actually incredible. We had like a gold level room, which is their club level. And I remember it was only like $70 or $80 or something like that. A massive, like more than 1,000 square foot suite, plus club level access. I remember we went to the mall next door and had some Chinese food. And that bill for the Chinese food was more than what I paid for that Fairmont.
I don't know if that's something to be happy about or to cry about, though.
Well, I mean, I guess it implies that Chinese food is expensive and luxury hotels are cheap, which I think are both true in Abu Dhabi.
That's fair. That's fair. I have barely spent any time in Abu Dhabi. Every time I tend to spend there, I'm literally like, go to the hotel and then early flight out the next day. Like, I've yet to spend any meaningful time. I haven't got to any of the tourism.
Yeah, I neither have I, actually. I mean, I probably haven't spent more than 24 hours in Abu Dhabi ever.
Oh, I'd be surprised if I got to 18 hours. Because if I fly into Abu Dhabi, I get out of Dubai. Have spent enough time in Dubai and still haven't seen everything. But I don't know.
Abu Dhabi has some nice hotels, though. I mean, we stayed at the Park Hyatt in Abu Dhabi.
I've wanted to stay there. Actually, it's funny that you say that because we had 36 hours planned on the way home from our Maldives trip. And we ended up rebooking on the Virgin as we kind of covered previously.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually going to spend that time at that Park Hyatt. What is it? Al Saadiyat Island?
Yep. I think that's the one, right? I think that's the one I've stayed at. Yeah.
It looks gorgeous.
It is. I remember the upgrade I got was just amazing. I don't even know if I used a suite upgrade or not, but we ended up getting like a corner, like terrace suite that was just massive. And like the balcony or the terrace was, oh God, it was like the roof of, I don't know, a parking lot or something.
We had something similar to that in the Grand Hyatt Doha, which I actually really liked that hotel, other than the fact that the suite they put us in was right over the nightclub, which was just unacceptable. We got no sleep that night.
Oh, that sucks.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of nice hotels there.
You know what my biggest problem with the Middle East luxury hotels are? There's one key critical thing that I found in every Middle Eastern UAE luxury 5-star hotel that is universally true.
Oh my God.
That degrades my experience.
Okay, so effectively that's two choices. It's either A, no Diet Coke, or B, poor air conditioning.
No, actually, it's neither of those things. Neither of those things.
Oh no.
No, it
Okay.
is that I enjoy a good buffet breakfast, and they only have beef bacon. There's no pork products.
Oh, I can totally see that. Yeah.
So it's always these very poor breakfast meats, which otherwise are these stellar buffet breakfasts. But it's always disappointing because I go there and I'm like, oh, this bacon looks delicious. I have it. Oh, wait, oh, this is not pork, and it tastes horrible.
You know, that used to never bother me
Mm-hmm.
when we were in Egypt. Some of their meats that like were trying to, I like my ham, right? Like I
Okay.
like my
Mhm.
ham. I like my prosciutto in the morning. If there's ham, sometimes I'll even make a breakfast sandwich with ham.
So they'll have pastrami, right? They'll have because that's beef, right? But they won't have ham. They won't have prosciutto.
Oh, some of this stuff looked even worse. I mean, like some of the stuff just looked so gamey. I think they called it beef, but it looked camel. And in all fairness, if they said it was camel, I probably would have had it just to try it.
And you probably would have given it a better rating.
Yeah, but I mean, I tried some of this stuff, and I mean, at least one piece of whichever it was, I just couldn't even swallow. That's my challenge. Like you are bacon. Me, I just like the sliced meats.
It's just something you become accustomed to. Like it's part of the expectation of being at a 5-star Western branded hotel. That there's certain things that you're going to have as part of your breakfast regime. And it's funny, like you're at the Park Hyatt in the Maldives, right? They cure their own bacon. Like I think they bring their own pork and like pork belly, and they'll cure it and they make it there, because you can't have that stuff in the rest of Maldives because it's a Muslim country.
Oh yeah. Continuing on that non sequitur,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at the JW Marriott in Cairo, they don't allow kids in the lounge at any time. Not breakfast, not any time.
I almost can support that a little bit, to be completely honest.
Well, here's why I can support it. Because where they do the breakfast for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
they do a little evening meal. Alcohol flows freely. They do 2 nights, they do a buffet, not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then every other night, the remaining 5, they do a plated meal. You get a soup. You get a meal that I think they had like salmon, like scallops,
That seems like a really nice substitute.
steak.
These are for the families,
vegetables.
essentially.
Yeah, and like a little Middle Eastern pastry or a samosa. Samosa's not Middle Eastern. It was something similar. And then dessert was some red velvet. Now, we were the only family that like truly was a family. There were a couple of kids that were down there, or like an older sister and her younger sister. And then the father like came down, I guess, from the lounge just to check on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were the only total family that were down there. And don't get me wrong, the plated meal was not amazing,
Right.
but the fact that they did it, I found that was an innovative approach, and I really enjoyed that part.
Well, and the thing is, in the Middle East, I think families traveling is so much more common. Not that people don't travel as families in the U.S., but I just think it's even more common than it is here in the U.S. because there's probably more of that kind of travel than maybe even just business travel, right? There's probably more large families or groups of people traveling together.
If that's the case, I feel like they'd be more accommodating, like what you see, in Bali, for example. I mean, you could go either way, right? Like a friend of mine went to the Hyatt Regency Aqaba in Jordan, and no kids allowed, no alternative.
That's surprising.
What they allowed him to do was go into the lounge, grab a drink, grab desserts, and then take them out. That was the limit of what they let him do. I mean, if you look at what the old Grand Hyatt Singapore used to do, that I think was probably the best, similar to what the JW, right? The Grand Hyatt Singapore, before they went to renovation, and I hope they'll open because I really want to do it again, visit them. They had adult only in the lounge, and I don't know if it was adult only in the evening. I think it was evening, it was adult only. But then they did, down by the pool, they did like a little barbecue sort of for families. Now, I never went down there, so I assume they had drinks and, sufficient food offerings, because that lounge was just fantastic. I mean, you've been there. That lounge, you could have a full meal. You were very comfortable up there.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in Aqaba, and we stayed at the Intercontinental, and I paid up into the lounge at the Intercontinental. I did the upcharge because we were just in a regular room, and there was hardly anybody in the lounge. Like it was great. The lounge attendant was amazing, so friendly, very talkative. Like they were so excited to speak English with us. And I think that lounge was set up so that there were all these like kind of really separated areas, so that if there was a family, they would really kind of be separate from everybody else. So it probably wouldn't have been that big a deal because you could almost have everybody almost have their kind of their own balcony that they could sit out at, eating their food, drinking their drinks. And they had enough of them that, you really, I mean, there were only like probably 5 people in the lounge, including the lounge attendant.
And that's interesting because that sounds like such a better approach than I think the Grand Hyatt in Beijing and the Grand Hyatt in Seoul both had family lounges on one side. So like, you walk down the hall.
I think they just have areas where they have just like separate rooms where there's more self-contained, right? That's probably the better option if you ask me.
Yeah, because otherwise you feel like a second-class citizen. I mean, like I literally felt like a little bit of a second-class citizen. Here we are, we're down in the lobby restaurant or the garden cafe, whatever it's called. And yeah, we're getting pretty decent service. Don't get me wrong. They're bringing all the beverages to me versus me having to make my own beverage. And there's like 2 guys to service 5 of us, other than them just chilling on their phones. It was pretty decent service and everything, but it still feels like, oh, you can't come in here. And that just gives you a little bit of a stigma.
Yeah, but I think there's a little bit of a balance because we've also been in some of these lounges where, I'll be honest, some people have been a little like they've not had the best etiquette with kids.
Oh, that's true.
And they're kind of like making a mess. I almost think the lounge in Rio felt like that a little bit at one point. Remember the Grand Hyatt that we were just at?
Yeah, in Rio.
I felt at least one part of that evening, there was probably some family that came in. I was like, they're not particularly, low impact. They were being quite loud, and I think the kids were kind of just like going all over the place.
Yeah, that's true. And the funny part is I haven't spent enough time in South America to know whether that's a common thing. Like I feel like in the Middle East, sometimes that's actually kind of common.
Yeah, and that's part of the sensibilities is like, I think different cultures will have more of a stigma. I would imagine in Japan, you're not going to get that.
Yeah, that's probably true.
The Japanese are like all about like, you don't talk, you don't listen to music, you make no noise on the subway, right? It's like that is a public space. You are not to impose on other people's ears in that space.
And I think that's a really valid point. I mean, Singapore is another interesting one. The JW there specifically says no kids allowed in the evening. We opted not to stay there because of it.
Yeah, Singapore's another, they're big on their rules, right? That's another culture where it feels like they're about enforcing certain things that we're not used to.
I mean, you say that, but like we're both children of the 80s, 90s where we remember the chewing gum and...
Yeah, and the caning. Yes.
And
yes.
So there was a lot of stigma of Singapore. And I had some trepidation the first time I went. And then I got there and I'm like, whoa, what's the big deal? Like, and a lot of our, like my family was like, oh, you're going to Singapore. Make sure you don't do anything. Like, don't even step on the cracks on the sidewalk. And you get there and it's like a very normal country. Like you just act like a normal human being. And, it seems pretty reasonable.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I think it's great if you're a normal human being. I think the problem is like you stray from the normality just a little bit and you're going to get your hand slapped.
Yes, or worse.
Which some people might like. Some people may be okay with that. And I think the Singaporeans are okay with that because they said, okay, well, I'm giving up some stuff, but you know what? In totality, this place is pretty nice. So I'm okay with that.
I would gladly accept the occasional ruler on my hand in the event that I made a mistake with my mobile device on speaker in an airline lounge if everybody else had to succumb to the same fate.
I agree. Maybe people who are using speakerphone in an airline lounge should be caned. That's probably worse than the chewing gum.
Yeah, I kind of think so. but you know what? It's probably good that we're not the ones dealing such punishment.
Yeah, we're not dictators of any island states that I'm aware of. So I don't see any of these rules coming to a city-state near you anytime soon.
Oh gosh, could you imagine some of the groups that we frequent on Facebook?
Oh my God. These are governments I would not want to be part of.
I wonder what the punishment would be for their feet on a bulkhead.
Oh, I don't know. Bare feet?
Bare feet or shoes. I think I think people feel strongly both ways.
And you're right. I probably would generally avoid putting my feet up there. How about putting your bare feet on the armrest of the person in front of you? I think that's more egregious.
I think that's why is it the 727 that has the aft stairs? I think you put your bare foot on somebody's armrest in front of you. I think you do a DB Cooper without the parachute and without the bag of jewelry. Maybe that's a little aggressive, but
Some
that's
could say
pretty
that
gross.
that might be slightly asymmetric punishment, perhaps.
And I wonder how many people know who DB Cooper is and the
I
story of
think a
DB
lot of
Cooper.
people know, and I'm definitely one of the people who knows that he jumped out of a Northwest Airlines 727 over Oregon.
I didn't know it was Northwest, but I knew it was over the West Coast.
Yes, I think it was over Oregon.
And the rumor, of course, was that he had a parachute. I mean, he was never found.
Yeah, it's still unsolved to this day.
It's an interesting thing. There's a book, and I have to find it.
I think there's a lot of books about DB Cooper.
Well, it's not just DB Cooper, but there was a period of time where hijackings were just so incredibly frequent.
Well, that's the time before they had metal detectors at airports.
Yeah, but I think there was some other stuff going on too, because like you had a handful of hijackers that wanted to go to Cuba. And so like they'd hijack the plane, regardless of whether they were trying to get money, and they were like, I want to go to Cuba and you're going to fly me there.
It's interesting how people forget about pre 9/11, how different the world was. And of course, now we're old enough that we can remember 9/11, but there were people who weren't born when 9/11 happened. And this will, obviously date me as an old person nowadays.
Both of us.
Yeah. But, it's interesting how much the world changed, and we've almost forgotten. Like it's almost like the communal memory of how the world operated prior to 9/11. There wasn't any security theater. And we were just talking about the other day, like how you could walk up to the gate and get your ticket. That was a normal thing, or that was a convenience that the airlines thought, oh, well, if you're carrying on bags, I mean, you just go through security, go right up to the gate, and they'll print out a ticket for you.
Well, remember the old days of Southwest, you get there and they give you like a brown or a red or whatever color boarding pass. And like each flight would have a different color plastic boarding card. And like they gave you that, you got to the gate, when you're boarding, you hand that over. That's all you got. I mean, it was literally like.
Did they use like reusable boarding passes or something?
Yeah, they were reusable boarding cards.
How very eco.
It was the weirdest thing. Even at the time, it was really weird to me. But that was also when you had the little club seats.
The ones that face each other?
Yeah, you could face each other.
I was watching something and they were talking about how Southwest Airlines was the number one distributor of liquor.
Oh, I love that one.
In the state of Texas. Have you ever seen that? Because remember they would give out, that was the perk, that they would give like a liter of your favorite beverage, or I'm sorry,
Wild
liquor,
turkey. Wild turkey.
With every seat. Like that was their incentive to try to get passengers.
Well, remember, that was still when the cab was working, right? And so they had to convince people somehow to pay more for a seat. Right?
Because it was regulated. It was another thing that you forget about, pre-deregulation. Like, and I'll have to say, I didn't really fly before deregulation because, I'm not that old. But it's interesting how that's another sea change or step change in the way that aviation worked. It was deregulation and then it's 9/11. Those are the two major milestone seminal events in aviation.
And that impacted international as well, right? Remember KLM and the Vundel, the houses. I can't remember the
Delft houses.
The Delft houses, right? The U.S. Airlines went after KLM saying, you can't give alcohol to go. You can't give anything leaving the aircraft effectively, or you can't give a gift to incentivize passengers or customers to book with you instead. And their response was something to the effect of, well, we're just giving them a drink for the road.
Yeah, we're giving them an alcohol mini.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's interesting how much times have changed. And we should probably go into that more deeply at some point in the future. But I do still get a kick out of the fact that, just as you said, Southwest was the biggest distributor of alcohol. It's those small little things with that triangle route, right?
The back of the napkin, right? It was in a Dallas, Houston, and was it Austin or was it San Antonio?
I think it was Austin.
It's probably Dallas, Austin, Houston. Probably that was the triangle, right?
And it was Houston Hobby and Dallas Love Field. And the idea was that they were delivering people in such a way that, business class travelers might pay a little bit more to fly them and bring that liquor home with them. But that any business traveler could start out in Dallas, go for meetings in Houston, and be home that evening.
Right.
Which, I mean, when you think about it, that had to have been a pretty groundbreaking move in the 70s, right? I mean, to think that you could travel and, go to your meetings and then come home in obviously we weren't traveling at that time. Nowadays, yeah, could you fly up to New York? Well, okay, New York's a bad example because
It's not the flying that's going to take all the time.
right, New York's a bad example because it's not the flying that's going to take all the time because the airports are just crap.
Well, nowadays with Blade or something like that, maybe that is a thing now.
Well, yeah, but then you're spending significantly more dollars, right? I mean, Blade's like $150 one way.
That's true, but back in the 70s, if you were doing that Houston Dallas route on Southwest and you were paying what the Civil Aviation Board would expect you to pay for that flight, it's probably more expensive than flying from DC to LaGuardia or Newark or whatever and taking Blade. Like, it's probably more expensive what that business person from the 1970s was paying, even on Southwest.
Yeah, we'll have to look more into that.
Maybe that's a little research we'll have to do. Figure out what the inflation adjusted flight cost would have been from Dallas to Houston back in the 70s on Southwest.
Well, if we ever publish this episode, we can declare that we will do some follow-up and hopefully update in a couple of episodes.
As far as like rambling, freeform consciousness kind of episodes go, it's not a terrible one, considering it all happened organically.
Yeah, this is actually kind of fun one. Gosh, I think we should probably close it out here.
I guess so. And based on, our good friend Joe Chung's suggestion, maybe we need to have a pre-recorded outro here instead of having to do one ourselves off the cuff.
Want more travel banter? Become a Milenomics Patreon member and join the conversation with many other Miles and Points aficionados. Thanks for listening.